The most liked comment on every Warhammer 40K beginner's guide isn't, "Thanks for the tips." It's, "But how do I get out of Warhammer?" And the top reply, every time, on every video, is 4 words. That's the fun part. You don't. In the beginner guide comment data we analyzed, that exchange pulled 5 times more engagement than any other comment in the dataset. 5 times more than any faction lore explanation, any painting tutorial, any game mechanic breakdown, whatever a given guide was actually covering. 5 times more than anything else a beginner guide spends its runtime covering. The audience wasn't looking for a welcome mat. They already knew the hobby. They wanted somebody to finally tell the newcomers what was actually happening. This is that video. Beginner guides aren't dishonest. Most of them are written by people who genuinely love the hobby and want to share it. The problem is structural. There's a number they all give you, $168, and then the guide stops. Not because what comes after is hidden, but because what comes after stops being a single clean number and becomes complicated. Itemized. The sort of math that doesn't survive a welcome sequence. So the welcome sequence ends at 168, and you walk into your local game store or your Games Workshop outlet with that number in your head, and you pick up an Adeptus Custodes Combat Patrol box, and you feel, briefly, like you figured it out. You haven't. That Combat Patrol box contains a Blade Champion, 3 Allarus Custodians, 5 Custodian Guard, and 5 Custodian Wardens. Bell of Lost Souls confirmed the exact contents and points value in July 2024, approximately 780 points of models. The standard format for a real game of Warhammer 40K, the format every beginner's guide is preparing you to play, runs at 2,000 points. 780 divided by 2,000 is 39%. Your $168 box gets you to 39% of a legal army. Not almost halfway, not close, 39%. And right there, at 39%, is where every guide you've ever found ends. This one starts. 3 independent hobby publications examined the cost landscape from different angles. Creative Twilight, a long-running independent Warhammer blog, modeled the complete journey from zero to a legal 2,000-point army, including models, paints, tools, and rulebooks. Their confirmed figure, $815. That's the floor. Bell of Lost Souls covered the same territory in a July 2024 article specifically titled to answer the question nobody was answering. Warhammer 40K, how much does it cost to actually start playing? Spikey Bits cataloged the value dynamics across the starter set range from a different angle. Their 2025 to 2026 analysis found the Leviathan Starter Box contains $871.50 of combined content value against a $250 sticker price, which illustrates the structural relationship between what's marketed and what's needed to play. The gap between what every guide advertises and what actually gets you into a legal game runs 4.9 to 6.2 times. Nearly 5 to 1. $815 confirmed on the low end, approaching 1,000 or beyond depending on faction and build choices, with every figure subject to change whenever Games Workshop decides to adjust their catalog. Frame every number here as approximate, as of recent retail. The math is what it is. This is the receipt, every dollar of it. Start with the Combat Patrol at 168. You now have 780 points of gray plastic sitting on your desk. The Blade Champion and the Custodians and the Wardens, in their unassembled frames, gleaming potential of an army that currently represents 39% of a legal game. To reach 2,000 points as a Custodes player, you need significantly more. Custodes is an elite faction, smaller headcount than most armies, larger and more detailed kits per model, narrower product range to fill out a list. You're not closing the gap with cheap infantry boxes. Custodes players typically build toward 2,000 points by adding heavy support units, larger character pieces, or by alliancing with other Imperial factions. and these additions come at corresponding prices. Large centerpiece models in the Warhammer range regularly sit above $150 per kit, often well above. An Imperial Knight, which Custodes players frequently lean on for firepower, retails in the $190 to $200 territory at current market. The precise figure for specific kits wasn't independently confirmed across third-party sources during this script's research window, so treat it as an approximate range and verify current GW retail before purchasing. The direction of the number is accurate. Who's going to tell him? You've bought the models. Now you need to paint them. Unpainted gray plastic armies are, technically, permitted in casual games. They are also a visual tragedy. Getting from gray tragedy to tabletop ready involves paint, and quite a lot of it. Citadel paints, Games Workshop's own brand, the ones featured in every official tutorial, retail at $4.55 per pot for base paints, and between $7.80 and $8.25 for shade and layer paints. Both figures are confirmed at current retail. An army needs base coats for primary colors, shade washes to add depth and definition to recessed areas, highlights to pick out raised edges, and often technical paints for special surface effects, rust, blood, gemstones. A conservative, realistic starter paint collection for a single army runs 15 to 20 individual pots. At $8 per pot average for shades and layers, that's $120 to $160 in Citadel paint before you've opened a brush. Brushes wear out. They're a recurring cost. Before that line item goes in the budget, something the guides also don't mention: Vallejo and Pro Acryl, two competing brands used by professional painters alongside or instead of Citadel. Retail at approximately $4.25 to $6 per pot, 40 to 50% cheaper than Citadel, confirmed across multiple independent sources. Quality is comparable. The catch is workflow. Citadel's official tutorials are color matched to their own paints, so using Vallejo or Pro Acryl means working from color conversion charts freely available online. Minor inconvenience. On 20 paints, that's $60 to $80 saved immediately. Over a hobby lifetime where you'll paint dozens of models across years, this decision compounds into real money. Who's going to tell him? After models and paint, tools. Sprue cutters for removing model parts from the plastic frames they're molded onto. A hobby knife for cleaning mold lines, the tiny ridges of excess plastic present on every single component that must be removed before painting, or they will be immortalized there forever, visible from across the table. Plastic cement, which isn't standard craft glue. It's a solvent-based adhesive that chemically fuses polystyrene plastic at the molecular level, and nothing else does the job correctly for model assembly. Spray primer applied before paint, because acrylic paint applied directly to bare plastic adheres about as well as a polite request. These items add up. Verify current pricing at your local hobby retailer before budgeting, as a confirmed aggregate figure wasn't available at the time of this script's research. Then the Codex, the faction-specific rulebook containing all datasheets, special rules, and legal army building requirements for your chosen faction. And the core rules. Current prices on both weren't independently confirmed in third-party sources for this script's research period. Verify directly through GW's current storefront, but include both in your calculation before you think you're done. Run it the way creative Twilight did. $815, from 0 to legally playable. That's the confirmed floor, and the line items above are why. Who's going to tell him? The faction you choose before you understand any of this isn't just an aesthetic decision. It's a financial one, and most newcomers make it before they've ever seen a pricing structure beyond the starter box. Warhammer 40K runs dozens of factions, and the cost of building a legal 2,000-point list varies dramatically across them, not randomly, but according to a pattern. Factions with large model counts and cheaper individual kits spread the total differently than elite factions with fewer, more expensive pieces. Both paths reach 2,000 points. The bill isn't the same path. Space Marines occupy one end of this spectrum. They're the most broadly supported faction in the game's product range. More starter sets, more dual-use kits, more entry-level options than any other faction by a significant margin. A Space Marines player building toward 2,000 points has access to relatively cost-efficient infantry options, wide sub-faction variety, and the largest selection of list-building choices at different price points. Their cost floor is lower because the kit ecosystem around them is wider. Now look at the other end. Imperial Knights is the extreme case. A full Knights army at 2,000 points might put only a handful of actual models on the table, depending on list construction. Each one retails above $150. The per-point cost in model money is dramatically higher than an equivalent point value in Space Marines because the individual kit prices are high and there's no cheap filler. Custodes sit similarly. Elite model count, expensive individual kits, narrow list-building flexibility. This relationship between faction structure and total purchase cost is documented in independent academic literature on Warhammer. Research published through Sweden's Diva portal examined the relationship between point costs and retail prices across multiple Warhammer 40K factions specifically. The finding aligns with what experienced players already know. Points aren't priced uniformly across the catalog. The cost per point varies by faction, and that variance is significant. Who's going to tell them? Before you fall in love with the miniatures in the display case, look up what a legal 2,000-point list for that faction costs in boxes. Ask a player who runs that army. Not what should I get to start, but what did your full list run you? That number will tell you more about what you're committing to than any amount of time spent reading beginner guides. 6 exits from the most expensive version of this. Kill Team first. Kill Team is a smaller-scale skirmish game using Warhammer 40K miniatures on smaller tables with fewer models per side. A Kill Team starter box runs approximately $58 to $65, confirmed by Bell of Lost Souls in July 2024. That's 65% cheaper than a Combat Patrol as your first purchase. It teaches the entire hobby loop, assembly, painting, game mechanics, in a smaller, less financially brutal format. Critically, everything bought for Kill Team is fully compatible with regular 40K if you expand later. Nothing is wasted. For a newcomer who wants to understand what this hobby actually feels like before committing $800, Kill Team is the door before the door. Play before you buy. Sounds obvious. Almost no one does it before spending money. Local Games Workshop stores run demo games. Independent game stores host demo nights and community events. Warhammer community events happen across most major markets throughout the year. Tabletop Simulator, a PC platform, hosts digital versions of 40K that let you try the game mechanics without buying physical plastic. The play before you buy approach is consistently cited as the smartest starting move in experienced community discussions and consistently skipped by people who already have their credit card out. Sit across from a 2,000-point army, roll dice, move models. Find out whether you actually like the game before you own the game. Discount sourcing. Most newcomers buy directly from Games Workshop at full retail. Discount retailers exist in most markets and aren't hidden. They're just not advertised by GW. In the UK, Element Games is a documented example. Auspex Tactics confirmed 10 to 20% savings on standard GW products from retailers like Element Games. Independent game stores in most markets offer similar discounts, typically 10 to 15% below GW retail when you buy through them. You usually have to ask. On an $800 build, 15% back is over $120 in your pocket for the same models. Alternative paints. Already established, worth repeating because it compounds over time. Vallejo and Pro Acryl at $4.25 to $6 per pot versus Citadel at up to $8.25. 40 to 50% cheaper, confirmed. Color conversion charts exist and are freely searchable. Starting with alternative paints at the beginning of your hobby is dramatically easier than converting after you've built habits around Citadel's workflow. 3D printing. Entry-level resin printers are meaningfully more accessible than they were a few years ago. For casual and friendly games at most local stores, 3D printed miniatures are broadly accepted by the community. Official Games Workshop tournaments and ranked competitive events don't permit them. There's a real question around GW's intellectual property that doesn't resolve cleanly. This isn't a print your army for free solution without complexity. But for a player who wants to test a faction's playstyle before committing several $100s in official kits, the conversation is worth having at your local store. Then there's Aaron Lee Yeager. Wargamer.com documented his project, a 2,000-point orc army assembled for $10.33, working toward a self-imposed budget of $25. His method was scratch building, found materials, improvised components, creative fabrication, using a bits box accumulated over more than 30 years of hobby work. The reason it works for orcs and almost nothing else. Orc lore depicts them as aliens who build their weapons and vehicles from literal salvage and scrap. The faction's visual identity absorbs irregular, mismatched, improvised components as canonical. No other army in the game extends that cover. Scratch building a Custodes army to look intentional is a different and significantly harder problem. Yeager's 30-year bits box isn't a beginner resource. His fabrication skills aren't beginner skills. Keep it as proof of what the hobby can eventually become, not a plan for week one. Before the closing argument, something else deserves to be said plainly. In March 2024, Harvard Divinity School's Center for the Study of World Religions published a piece titled Miniature Mindfulness, Finding Flow in Warhammer 40,000 Figurines. Its finding, painting Warhammer 40K miniatures produces genuine psychological flow states, which the study linked to greater overall mental health, cleared minds, and real respite from everyday problems. That's not a community testimonial. It's a credible institution naming something players have quietly known for years. The hobby builds genuine community. It structures unstructured time in a way many people find stabilizing. The creative work involved, assembly, painting, army planning, rule learning, provides focused engagement that people with anxiety, depression, or attention difficulties often find specifically useful. For some people in this hobby, Saturday afternoon at the local game store isn't just a game. It's the part of the week that works. The cost is what it is, and that's real too. Both things are true simultaneously, and you're allowed to weigh them. The trap isn't designed. Nobody at Games Workshop sat in a conference room and deliberately buried the $815 number. It conceals itself, built into a presentation where the first number is clean and appealing, and every subsequent number only appears once you're already attached to the plastic. Academic research from Tampere University documented this dynamic formally. The published paper, titled With Remarkable Directness, More is More? Reconsidering the Pile of Shame, describes the Warhammer hobby's accumulation of purchased but unpainted models not as a community-running joke, but as a documented behavioral pattern. The pile of shame is real, it's named, it has been studied, and it persists because the game is genuinely good and the models are genuinely beautiful, and the hobby catches people in a specific and repeatable way that is nearly impossible to convey from outside and immediately recognizable from inside. One comment circulating in community threads asks it directly. What do you do if Warhammer gets inside you? The veterans who've been playing for 10 or 20 years smile at that question because they know the answer and they've been living it. You manage it, or you don't, and the pile grows, and you buy another box before the previous one is assembled, and the shelf fills with potential that outpaces the hours available to realize it. Both paths exist inside the hobby. Both are genuinely fine. The people grinning at newcomers asking how to get out remember asking the same thing, and they say, that's the fun part, you don't. Not as a warning, but as recognition. You've arrived somewhere real. Here's where everything lands. A Custodes Combat Patrol costs approximately $168 as of recent retail and delivers 39% of a legal army. Building from nothing to a legal 2,000-point game, models, paints, tools, and rules, runs $815 at minimum per Creative Twilight's confirmed calculation, with costs climbing toward $1,000 or beyond, depending on faction and choices. 3 independent hobby publications examine the cost landscape from different directions. Creative Twilight modeling the complete from zero journey, Bell of Lost Souls covering starter pricing, Spikey Bits analyzing what's inside the box relative to what you pay for it. The gap between the advertised entry cost and the actual cost of playing is real, it's large, and it was never secret. It was just never itemized. Your faction choice is a financial decision. Kill Team at $58 to $65 is a real alternative entry point. A 10 to 15% discount from a local game store over an $800 build puts over $100 back in your pocket. Vallejo and Pro Acryl save 40 to 50% per pot on a recurring cost. Playing a demo game before buying anything costs nothing and de-risks everything. All of that is yours now. The receipt exists. The number is $815, minimum, approximately, as of 2024 pricing. The faction decision matters before you make it. The entry path matters before you commit. And if you've absorbed all of this, looked at the number and thought, yeah, that's fine, I want in anyway, then you've met the hobby with your eyes open. That's the only real difference between walking into a trap and making a decision. Subscribe for more stories like this.